Greetings, citizens of the world. This is Anonymous Talk You. We are independent like all others, who choose to become anonymous for the sake of our own right to privacy. We are not a hacker pack of the Anonymous Cooperative. That is left to others. We wear the white hat and unite to reveal and promote truth and expose corruption in government and the corporate world wherever it is found. We are not anti-government. We stand against corruption within government by corporate-sponsored and backed politicians whose goals ultimately are to bring in a new world order which stands itself to be nothing less than a conspiratorial act against the American Constitution. We are born-again Christians. We are fundamentally sound in doctrine, which traces back to the time of Jesus according to what we now call the Holy Bible, in adherence to the King James Version, which withstands the test of time.
yeah, well, Jesse, I tell you what, because we're so used to technology, they've already installed one piece of the mark for us, which is to have us dependent on technology. Now, for a person who does not believe this, here's what those people who live in that time, but I always tell people, you pray, do the right things, that you may be worthy to escape all these things. That scripture's still there. But if we're stubborn and hard-headed, and we have not given ourselves over to the Father wholeheartedly, then, you may have to endure we're all going to endure something, but some may endure a lot more than others. I myself, I take no thought of what I may endure, because I exist to serve Him. And if I exist to serve Him, whatever He allows me to go through, then that's part of my purpose. And myself, I'm pleased with that. So I really don't take concern into my self-suffering. But I do want to see other people stand firm in full confidence of the Father when these days do come, because they are coming. And I have a fear that they're coming quickly, without notice to most. And it's going to take people off guard. It's going to catch them off guard. They're going to hit that point of being relaxed. They're going to disregard the signs in the heavens. They're going to disregard the earth expansion, the atmospheric compression. They're going to see lightning, Jesse, almost like those little lightning balls that they have with the gases and the lightning in there. This summer, they have recoded their vessels, not only for the oceans, not only for the radiation compensation in the atmosphere, but for large electrical discharges. Very large electrical discharges. Because if any body of significant size comes into this solar system, we're going to see electrical discharges from one of these objects to the other. And there's already to our south a large magnetic ball. It's a little bigger than Mercury, but it is not Mercury, and it is 100% magnetic, as far as they can tell right now. And you will not see that out there until the effects begin to take place, and then they'll say, well, we discovered this magnetic ball, which is likely causing these influences, because they're going to announce something so terrible that it will seem hopeless to believe in anything on earth.
Michael, is it this magnetic ball, is it visible to the human eye, or is it?
No.
It's a ball.
No, in fact, Jesse, it is. Although it's solid, it is so dark. It is so dark. It would be almost impossible for an amateur astronomer to pick it up. And due to its outside chemistry, if you look at it through infrared, it kind of melds in with the other infrared objects out there, so it may look like a blur, although it's closer than one would anticipate, than one would like it to be. And there are things like that lurking around. We're just in that area, in that time period, where we're about to face these things. Some of them will be announced. It will be scary. I'll just tell you right up front, it's going to be scary. Nations are a little nervous about these things, because there's nothing they can do about it. Zero. They've already blown, I was going to say, they already blew objects out of the sky, like Elenin. If people look up, because you can't trust NASA, all you have to do is start reading the European Space Agency's publications, and you'll see what's other things that are happening. Because what we don't announce, someone else has already taken care of. The European Space Agency did in fact launch very large missiles at Elenin. And a lot of people don't know that either. But they did.
I knew it broke up. That's all they were saying, that it had broken apart. But it's I guess it's, what is it now, just a debris field?
Yes.
Because it's trapped.
And then again, that's right, because it's still trapped in our in our solar system's pull, because when you break an object up, although scientists will say if it loses mass, it also loses its pull.
That's right.
But it never made it out far enough to escape Jupiter, so it's going to be slingshotted right back around to it.
Our sun is traveling through the galaxy, and as it does so in the arm of the Orion arm in the galaxy, it's going at speeds that I couldn't even tell you. It's tremendous speeds. It creates a vortex, and the sun is going and spinning, and the Earth and Jupiter and Moon and all these things are caught up in that vortex, and we're going around and around as it's traveling. As we're traveling around this pancake, or this plane, this elliptical plane of the galaxy, we're not just going straight around. We're going up and down like a roller coaster all the way around. Just like our Earth wobbles when it goes around the sun. And that gives us the seasons. Well, we're wobbling, the entire solar system is wobbling as it goes around the plane of the ecliptic. And when it does that, it goes through different parts of that Milky Way street, or that plane of that elliptical plane of the galaxy. We go above it and we go below it. And it takes thousands of years to do that. So for a long time we're above it, where it's not as dense, that area that we're traveling through. And then we go closer to the elliptical, and it gets in that part of the galaxy where there's just a very dense number of objects, debris, and stars. That's where we're heading into, and that's why we're having all of these meteor showers and things that's going to be coming to the Earth. Also, that is why science, if you noticed the other day when that big meteor hit Russia, they went to Congress and they asked NASA in Congress, why didn't you guys see it? And NASA's answer was, it came from the sun. And then at that meeting they said they had found all these pieces that could hit the Earth, but there is a portion of them that are coming from the sun that they won't be able to map, and they need a different telescope to be able to see those. Well, what we, the public, are not being told is that all of them almost are going to come from the direction of the sun. Because, as I just said, the sun is in the lead, and we, Earth, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Mars, everything, we're following the sun. It's going like this around the galaxy. We're trailing behind it in its vortex, and that's why it looks like we're going around the sun. So it's going, and the sun's in the lead, and we're behind. So as that sun passes objects in this dense part of the galaxy, it's going to go by these planets before we do. And so that's why all of these meteors and comets and things that we're going to be seeing are going to be coming from the direction of the sun.
Now, in this scenario, we have an object approaching the Earth with a magnetic field. Now, this is what Michael was talking about. Again, we wouldn't be able to see it in the infrared, but as its magnetic field entwines with the Earth's, how is that going to affect this tilt we're in this extreme weather? Do you see what I'm saying? And as it gets closer, he's talking about lightning storms and energy transfers. And with our shields being weakened from the solar blast, how close will it have to get before we start seeing these effects? There's been other information besides just Michael about some type of energy behind the Earth. We've seen it before. We've seen the magnetopods reverse. Now, there's a lot of scenarios involved in that, the tilt of the Earth. And listen, as we look at the CME that we haven't had to deal with yet, notice that at least from the light of the sun there, that just happened today. We've got not a lot of large solar flares. We're watching them. We still have a filament here that has not released. We watched it come around the sun, but here's the CME, the coronal mass ejection. But in the scenario of the two objects with the magnetic fields that we were looking at, we have to think of the polarity of the object below the Earth. Is its North Pole magnetic field matched polarities with the South Pole of the Sun? That would be the strongest object to be opposite polarities. Or is it the same? And will that push the South Pole away from it, shifting the Earth further over that way? Or will it attract the North Pole of the Earth? You understand what I'm saying?
Saying that this object, this magnetic object, has changed. It changed something in these, in both the Earth objects, Earth's ancient objects, and those objects that are orbiting around the Earth.
Okay. Now, it's changing the orbits, and magnetic fields, things like that?
Well, no, not the orbit. For very long, they've been monitoring the signals, pulses and so forth coming off these objects, the radiation levels and so forth. Well, for the last 4 years, that those energy levels have been exponentially increasing, including those devices in the Earth.
Now, is it a frequency change that they're seeing?
Now, I can't give you definitive, I can't narrow it down that much, but both the radiation, the emissions of energy within these objects has been increasing for the last 4 years, and it is increasing as this object is coming closer to Earth.
Now, you had mentioned in the last show that our shields are weaker. And I had noticed that we had a CME. It wasn't that strong that came over our night before last, and it gave us a quake from the North Pole and the South Pole, not exactly on the poles, but in that section of the Earth. And the CME didn't seem to be strong enough. It wasn't one of those giant blasts that you see out there. And as it passed over the Earth, I was watching it, and we had a Greenland Sea quake, and then way down, almost in the Arctic, on the same fault zone. Now, and the first thing that popped into my mind was what you had said. Are our fields becoming that weak to where that type of impact can do that much crustal displacement?
Actually, they are. It would appear, if you look over this through trending or through its history, they are in fact collapsing, it would seem. They're very weak. The magnetic fields around the Earth, magnetosphere is just it seems to be dissolving. Every day it seems to be dissolving. So it's slowly dissipating. which is not so good for the core of the Earth because the core of the Earth is controlling that.
Right. Now, the solar stream controls the entire engine of the whole way the whole thing works. The magnetosphere is picking up the solar energy, transferring it in through the poles into the Earth, making the motor, it's an electric motor we're dealing with here.
That's right. And something is happening.
Is it a decrease in solar activity causing because they say technically if your solar stream stopped, your magnetic fields would collapse. Is it because solar activity is decreasing, or is it because of something else?
I think that we are intimately tied to the sun's power, and our dynamo is losing RPMs. The dynamo that actually causes that, creates that magnetosphere is failing, or certainly slowing down in RPMs. They are beginning to print articles discussing the speed of the Earth's core, and they made a wrong estimate some years back, and so that speed was way off target. As they've discovered, with newer technologies, we can peer deeper and deeper into the Earth. And they have, now this is on the public side, they have admitted that they made a huge mistake in the speed of the core of the Earth. But they probably did that and published that to compensate for what's actually happening, which is our dynamo is slowing down every day.
What does that mean? We know that it's going to weaken our shields. I guess that alone would be enough for major concern, because if our shields weaken because of our dynamo is weakened, but the solar stream is not, and we have the influence of these outside bodies coming in, it's just not a good scenario.
No, it's not.
Any way you talk about it. Michael, I don't know if you were listening to the show, I think it was yesterday. A lady had called in and had dreamed about these two objects in space, Earth and another object approaching, and the lightning transfer. Now, she hadn't heard anything about it but she said that she was listening to either our show or Brother Paul's show, and when you called in about this, and she said she hit the floor because it was one dream that she had kept. You know how you forget a lot, but this one just stayed in her mind, and when you said those things, she said she was overwhelmed because you described exactly what she saw. And do you see that electrical transfer of this lightning being one of the major problems that we're going to see?
It's a big worry. In fact, I think people should understand that the nations understand that first there are otherworldly powers. In other words, they know about the other dimensions. They are quantifying information by the nanoseconds in projecting probabilities of their next move. That with coercement from these other powers, which we know them as principalities and powers in the air, they just know it on an intimate level. To us, it's a word, it's an idea, it's something non-tangible at the moment. So it's somewhat amorphous. It has no form or shape to us, but they know it intimately and have dealt with the manifestations and the warnings and the orders from this other side. So for individuals to have those dreams, warnings, as they would be, is not really surprising due to what I've been exposed to. But the nations are preparing. They know these electrical discharges can wreak havoc on the surface of the Earth. They already know this. There's nothing they can do about it except to attempt to circumvent it through some type of communication and so forth with those entities that they know about.
And they know they can try to mitigate the problem, but there's really nothing, like you said, nothing they can do about it.
No.
What do you see? You told us about watch for the changing colors in the skies. I think maybe a lot of times in the sunset, things like that. Mm-hmm. What do you see the first impacts that we will know? In other words, we've got the skies changing, extreme lightning. Is Is that to be tied in with these straight line winds you're talking about?
Yeah, that'll happen too. And you know what, Jesse, the first model that was developed in the 1980s, the first indication everyone was looking for were birds dying, and then the fish dying, and then fish beaching themselves. Now, this was in a computer model in the 80s, what to look for at the approach of these objects that were spotted in 1985. And so birds are largely affected by magnetic changes. They're also affected by neurological conditions that are caused by increased energies or fluctuations of energies in the atmosphere. Now, we're walking on the ground. We can't actually feel that energy all the time. Birds flying at higher altitudes can certainly be affected by magnetosphere changes and fluctuations in energy in the magnetosphere. Certain parts of the Earth, which are on ley lines, and those offset to the angles of the ley lines, people will likely find dead animals. They'll find a correlation between the ley lines and a lot of dead animals dropping over dead. And so they give all these explanations, of course, why they're dying. But the magnetosphere is affected greatly by these approaching objects. Affected greatly. And at some point, we will entertain high energy transfers from one body to the other.
Now, how can our, like Anthony, I think you're still with us. I mean, it doesn't seem that our electrical grid could stand this for very long. You know, looking at one of the indications of this happening, it looks like an overload on a Carrington event on a mega scale, Carrington event.
Are you speaking with me, Jesse?
When you talk about that much energy, you know.
Is that directed to me, Jesse?
Yes.
Hello?
And Anthony, yeah. Both of you guys.
Oh, and by the way, how you doing, Anthony? It's good to meet you. I'm sorry, I didn't say that before.
No, it's great to meet you as well. I think we have some dovetailing information here. Yes, I think, Jesse, we're moving into, definitely an overload situation electrically, but I want to give Michael the floor, but I have one quick question for Michael. Are you speaking in terms of pyramids when you're describing the Earth-based structures that are being affected by these energies?
Well, the pyramids and also some of the ancient ruins, they contain obelisks. And in most cases, they will keep they keep them guarded. The ruins are guarded, but a lot of people miss the fact that some of the stones of what they think are stones are actually devices. They're just at a massive scale. It's hard to identify them as a component to something. It would be compared to a transistor being taken out of a circuit board and then left on the ground somewhere. But they know how to put these. They know what these parts do. They know what this ancient technology does. The problem is they can't harness the energy source that activates them. And it just so happens that this external energy is beginning to activate these things. And they're going to time everything just right to harness what they need to accomplish what they need to accomplish with the dimensions.
I have a quick question, Jesse, and then I'm just going to let you take over there. But Michael, do you have a timetable? I think that's what a lot of people tend to focus in on.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I can't give a timetable. I can give you what to look for. Of course, we have the dead birds, but the sky changing colors in all different matter of colors, which could be taken as an aurora and so forth, at sunset where they're most visible, will be one of the predominant signs right before the large energy transfers. We will see things before that, like high winds, abrupt storms, lightning storms that are probably 100 times more powerful than we've experienced in the past. But when the energy gets at a certain point, a tipping point, the skies will become very charged, causing very beautiful colors to swim through the sky. that will be at that point. People will know they're in. We're there. We're at that tipping point. So.
Jesse, can I ask one quick question?
There's no ETA, right? There's no estimated time of arrival, or any way to project that compared observations from, say, 7 years ago to now, or anything, Michael?
Jesse, when they discovered 8 large bodies, and one was in 72, one was in 1980, and the other was in 1983. When they discovered and confirmed these large bodies, the greater half of them did not seem to follow any type of physics. In other words, they were taking their own route.
Right, random.
Does that help answer? And that's why a timeline cannot be given, and the calculations are being made. I mean, they can track movements and so forth, but on a few of them, it's useless to do that. So you have to look for the signs in the earth to determine.
Well, that it's interesting because I read an article where they had discovered, they were looking into the inner workings of the solar system, the Milky Way, and they had found a group of stars that are doing what you're saying. There's no there's no pattern. They don't seem to be emanating from a certain area. They are escaping from that, and it's very random. There's no way to project what they're doing. It sounds a lot like what you're saying there.
Yeah,
have you seen that
I'm
before?
privy to portions of that, and you're right. They have no, as we know physics, they have no pattern to them. So no mathematical pattern, and neither do these objects that are in our solar system at the moment.
Can I throw a question to you?
Yes.
Okay. Back in June of last year, there was the largest gamma ray burst ever recorded by scientists that occurred while they were convening in Denver, and it was Earth-directed. It was emanating from the black hole in the burster Markarian 421, and that gamma ray burst again was Earth-directed. Do you see any correlation between that event and the movement of these objects coming towards Earth, or any relation to the energy that's involved?
Well, one of them in particular it would appear it was affected regarding its movement with the Markarian incident. So, but just with one object. The rest just ignored it. But with one object, there appeared to be some trajectory changes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, on that change you're talking about, was it during one of these events, and in which direction was the change, or was that noted?
No, I know there's a change. There was a change. As far as directions, I really can't pinpoint. I really can't pinpoint anything. I can't do that. But it did affect one of the objects, or one of the objects did in fact react to it. That's a very large. That's a very gamma rays are both deadly, but the energy from a gamma ray can be very useful in many different fields of study. And this object could have gone one way or the other. It could have been affected by the gamma ray. It could have reacted somehow. Or it could have avoided it or harnessed it. We don't know. We just know that it did in fact affect it.
But do you find it rather curious that it was directed and at such a specific time?
Yes, and I also find it curious that around that same time was these objects had begun to alter. Our position in the solar system is we won't be in this position for a very long time. far beyond our lifetimes. But our position and what is coming up to our south and other variables that you add in for gamma ray bursts to, kind of mingle with that timing in these situations, I found that extremely odd indeed.
Okay, I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit, to use an old phraseology, being an old guy. My book utilizes that gamma ray burst to open a portal, and it's a work of fiction. However, that's where I was led to, and I find what you're saying to be confirmation of what essentially was a work of fiction.
Well, as I said before, gamma rays, if the energy, and I'll use a lot of hypotheticals, guys, not hypothetically meaning they're wrong, but I have to keep things plausible for my own safety. But the energy that can be harnessed from a gamma ray is enormous. It's just simply enormous. And if that were the fact, then that energy could have been captured to be used at a later time, or at a specific moment in time, or it could have accomplished what it was set out to do. Now, Earth and the bodies around it, essentially, they can act like a very large capacitor storing energy up, and it only takes the proper circuitry to release that energy. Now that we have more objects coming into the solar system, it would appear that one of these objects, or the magnetic object in particular, could in fact be that key, and things may be timed around it.
Exactly. If you hit it right on the mark, you get a gold star.
That's a very good, and that was in your book. That's interesting. That is that's very good. Very good. Very good indeed.
Jesse, you better jump in here.
Well, I was just going to say, you're talking about timing, and we talked about entering this 13,000-year half cycle of going into the galactic ecliptic, Michael. And from what I've read about this, is that's when you're going to be the most susceptible to an energy burst. Also, debris, which we talked about before, I think it's every 26,000 years we make that rotation. But that timing, these scientists know of that exact moment when that center is reached, but they wouldn't know of say, a gamma ray burst unless they knew that it was a constant burst being emitted as we cross that point. You see what I'm saying? That timing, it seems to be along with this crossing of the galactic ecliptic.
Yeah, well, they do know the timing. They have, like I said before, the industrial complex physics are different from public physics, and it takes an individual to do his or her own research, to work through their own set of numbers and run simulations and so forth to find out that they've been, led down the wrong path. Some of the impossibilities in the theorized formulas in physics don't stand up. They don't work. However, not everybody has studied enough to find that out. So they perpetuate things so that people think a portion of science is impossible. But I assure you that the military-industrial complex does not. In fact, they use things all the time that the general population deems impossible.
Right. They would have to know that time. I guess through satellite instrumentation, even from the outer edges of the solar system, they would detect this gamma ray burst before it happened to say, well, we need to turn on or have the machines ready for this or whatever to pick this energy up. That we've got outer probes that have went all the way out to, our heliopauls to see that Vo-shock effect there. But that seems like a probe, an observation probe, in the sense of this energy burst.
Can I jump in real quick to help both of you out real quick? Let's go back to the conference that was taking place in Denver, which is just the location itself rings a lot of bells and raises flags. But during the conference, they already had most of their instruments, their satellites and ground-based instruments, pointed at Markarian 421 before the burst even emanated from the black hole. That alone tells you that they knew that this was going to take place due to the buildup of energies within the black hole itself. So I'll back out and let you go.
Yeah, they did.
They knew that they were pointed. They knew this was coming, is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, if you were going to tap into an energy source, I'd say that would probably be one of the strongest you could get.
Well, like I said, you're dealing, a capacitor can store whatever it goes into it.
Right.
That's the job of a capacitor, to store energy and release it based on whatever the circuitry is. Well, if we are essentially a huge capacitor, then whatever energies they wanted to store, they got it with that one gamma ray. They're just waiting with the key. A gamma ray is extremely powerful.
Yep.
It's just extremely powerful. And
it was the largest ever recorded.
yeah, so that's like, 1 second of a gamma ray burst is, I can't even make an equivalency of the energy. I mean, it could set everybody free with energy forever, probably. But that's how much energy is in a gamma ray, if they could harness it.
Right. I hope they got a good fuse box, because they're going to need it. Like you said, we were talking about earlier, you don't have to tap into like an inductive coil. You can adjust a coil system to just pull off certain portions of energy. You know how you can provide voltage and things like that through the coil system. I know there has to be planning for the overload, and to be able, but I'm not sure it's kind of like the nuclear bombs. Are they sure they know how much energy they're dealing
Michael,
with?
how about the atmosphere being laced with aluminum and chemtrails? Correlation, tie-in, fuse, usable weight.
Absolutely. You're essentially, look, they've turned Earth, just to make it simple, they have turned Earth into a component. They've turned it into an electronic component, of which goes with the rest of the technology that is both above the stratosphere and so forth, the atmosphere, and on the surface of the Earth, and inside the Earth. Now they have the perfect protective shells underneath the Earth, in case something goes wrong, but we don't. And we know that biblically, they will go hide themselves in the rocks, in the dens, in the caves. So they have their underground facilities prepared, ready, operational. And more every day, you see people missing from the government. And when you do see them on TV, you'll never see them in daylight. They don't have hands, and it's because they're working underground. And they're not coming topside. And people will see that more and more.
Absolutely. We have got to do this on the next show. When can we get together, the three of us?
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys make the date, because I tell you, I'm getting my time, I'm taking my time off of a lot of things, and that's what the deputies take over for. And so if you guys set a date, I'd love to talk about this further, because I think people, as I said before, my largest concern is that people don't have heart attacks when these things begin to happen, simply because they never thought it could exist.
Exactly.
That's the whole point in the questions I ask, Michael, is to bring awareness so that does not happen. And I believe even if we had a complete picture with a script, it would still cause men's heart to fail when they realize what's happening. And that's without realizing, I mean, that it's got to be so different from what people think. We think one thing, we're expecting a certain thing, and we're digging and we're looking around. What kind of attacks are we going to be coming from once the pit is open? And we probably don't have a clue.
Yeah. I'll add one thing, Jesse. What would be more beneficial to Satan? To kill a Christian, or to have his soul, to make that Christian rebel against God? What would benefit him more? Because he's a very depressed individual. He gains nothing by killing a Christian. He gains everything by turning a Christian or believer in Christ against Christ.
Well, Michael, you were cutting out on me. Again, it may be on my end, but you were asking what would he gain? What would someone gain by killing a Christian?
I was saying that, that was one of those lead questions. In other words, my point was this, is that Satan is seeking to turn Christians against Christ. That's what he's doing. So his weapon that he's employing right now is to turn Christians against God himself. That's what he wants to do. He wants to deplete the faith, take away the hope, and turn a Christian against God himself.
Right.
You see it in other nations. And one thing that keeps crossing my mind is in the nations where you see the Christian persecution and the killings, they're a minority. Now, the United States is a different problem for the people that are trying to do this. Not everyone's Christian, but there's a lot of God-fearing people. And what I see is the introduction of lack of morals. We're taking Christ out of the schools, out of the government, all the new laws, the gay marriage, everything. In other words, making it more normal for Christians to be not normal here, and to create the same imbalance that we have with the populations in other countries. In other words, they have a problem. How can they make Christians the minority so that the persecution becomes real here?
Right. That's right.
They're having to approach it like we're seeing in the Arab Spring, all the persecution there, because they have shifted power. You see what I mean? The overthrow has allowed this Christian persecution to take full fury. Now, but they're having to approach it here somewhat different. Now it may change. It may change very quickly. But they have that's what they want to do with us here. They want to make the Christians the minority so that it is normal to see the persecution from the police or military, whoever that's involved in following orders of FEMA camps or whatever has to happen to bring about this one world order. But it's an attack on the moral here to make us a minority. Do you see that, Michael or Anthony?
Yeah.
In other words, how could they get it okay to persecute us here? And it has to be by taking God out of everything to make Him and His Word the minority.
Well, they're trying to. You know what's in the way? The Holy Spirit's in the way. It's in the way. If you kill a Christian, the Holy Spirit is still here, and these people are steeped in witchcraft and demonic things. They understand dark sentences. They understand witchcraft, what people call witchcraft. They understand the power of demonic devices and so forth. And so if they can get the Holy Spirit out of the way, their devices work better, their plans work better, certain powers can rise. Did you ever notice that the beast doesn't actually come to earth until, the greater half of the population of believers is gone? Because the Holy Spirit's in his way. Even in the Bible it says that there will be a great falling away. And their weapons today will not work in the presence of a true believer. There's an energy that a true believer has that they're not aware that they have it. But these ancient technologies will not work against that energy. That's why Satan wants to turn people against Christ. If they lose the Holy Spirit, he can then gain power. He cannot gain power over the Holy Spirit in his way. Yeah.
The armor of God.
Yeah. That's it. And so, like you said, Jesse, they're taking God out of everything so that people are numb. They've given out false dates like 2012. That was a psychological operation that worked very well, because what happened after 2012 is no one wanted to hear anything about dates. They didn't. They didn't want to hear anything about prophecy. That's what happened. It numbed people concerning prophecy.
Right, and they hype other things like that too. You know,
Yeah.
to hype it and then distort it so that you're numb to that. So you remember they hyped ISON, Comet of the Century. Now I watched it come all the way in as multiple nuclei, and I knew that what was going to happen when it come around the sun. I knew. I'd been watching this a long time. But by that overhyping and then the disappointment when people were expecting a spectacular light show, that didn't happen, which would have been a better scenario for the Earth. And my viewpoint would be for it to hold together and not be split apart. But they put this, so now if we start to warn people about these things, it's just another ISON, just another so-and-so. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, and which fulfills prophecy. That people would come and say, things have been going on like this for years. What are you talking about? They've been going on like this for years, and they're going to continue. That's part of prophecy. That didn't happen in the olden days because they didn't have instant communication. We have instant communication. Now that we have instant communication, we're aware. We're much more aware than we were 50 years ago. So when we hear these things, it even said in prophecy that people would come and say, things have been going on like this from the beginning, which a lot of people are hearing. But that's part of prophecy. Because, see, ISON is not finished. We know ISON is not done yet. A lot of people may think it's done. They may tell you it's finished. What they're not telling you is that those fragments are going to get caught in a gravitational pull and turn right around. In fact, a lot of objects will get turned right around and brought to the inner solar system again.
Well, that makes sense. Well, we're seeing, I don't know if you saw the report of the fireball that came in over the Red Sea. That thing, it broke in two, and it was led by a smaller object. That thing was huge. I had to translate from the Arabic with Google Translator, and they were talking.
Well, I was going to say that sometimes there are. Well, first of all, part of the field of which I'm involved is not so much scientific. It's hard to describe, but let's just say that I deal with, in the latter half of my career, I've been dealing with very unusual things, extremely unusual things. And if you wanted to camouflage, now one of the big tactics of Satan and demonic entities and fallen angels is to stay hidden. They don't want the world to know that they exist because it would increase the faith of the Christians. And remember, Jesse, I told you they need a shock and awe effect. They have to have the shock and awe effect. So they have to hide what they're doing. Some of these objects, there have been reports of meteors that will come near our satellites and space stations. Now, these are meteors with the tail and everything. And then they'll turn around and go back. These have been videotaped, cataloged, and stored with the DOD and other agencies. But they hide these things so that people can never understand that these fallen angels and demonic entities are absolutely real. And they absolutely change form. And they absolutely travel around as balls of light. You ever hear that term, angel of light? And Lucifer is 1,000 points of light. Have you ever heard that term? Well,
George Bush Sr.
To a murdered son. Yep. Husband to a murdered wife.
In other words, they can morph in form. And often they will appear as lights in the skies. Just like many people who see UFOs all the time, these people are oppressed in a way. They are oppressed. Unless it's one of those large-scale sightings in which, now some of those objects are ours. Some of the drones that are in Syria right now that people will start to get video of, it didn't come from space. It is a mixture of international cooperation, technologies. There are no borders when it comes to those type devices. And they are drones. They don't make noise. They can fly at 1 mile an hour up to incredible speeds without sound. Because we simply don't need the propulsion that the public is led to believe that's all we have. We've gone far beyond that. Far beyond that. So they're going to see. Go ahead.
No, are you referring to torsion field propulsion technology?
Well,
torsion field?
they use that a lot. It began with the first device. Well, not the first device, but they found a device in India. They found 2 other devices in Afghanistan. They found several devices in Iraq twice, because the second time they had to go back and get the energy source that powered the first device. And people don't really believe in this, but if they read their Bible, they know, and if they knew true history, which will be announced, because now it's getting harder and harder to suppress archaeological finds. Too many independent archaeologists out there, and they're starting to come forward with these things, and you can't suppress everything, which is one of the major duties of the NSA, to suppress knowledge, because they don't need to. I'll tell everyone the truth right here. Everything you do or say through any electronic means has been captured, quantified, to track where civilization is going in a fraction of a second. This is done every single second. This is what they're doing with the information. The NSA tracks data that needs to be suppressed so that these fallen entities can never be found out. That's what they're doing. And a lot of people think the NSA is collecting their emails and so forth. They trend through a quantum computer that Anthony did talk about. All this data is being fed into there continuously. And they've transcended devices, so to speak. They're transcending devices. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, we go into the quantum computer, the ADOS quantum computer, and the multi-dimensional aspects of the qubits. But let me throw something at you real quick. One word, tritium, as it relates to propulsion. Does that ring a bell?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
In fact, there was a problem with the YF-22 Raptor, with the skin of the Raptor. The YF-22 Raptor was let's just say a dual-purpose aircraft, and not all of them were made the same way. In fact, there are reports that people could search. They have seen YF-22 Raptors fly no higher than 1,000 feet over their head or 500 feet, but they didn't hear anything. They didn't hear a thing. But there was an issue with the tritium, and tritium can make you sick. And if it's not done properly, it will make you sick just by being in close proximity to it for a while. And that did happen a few times.
And it's replaced the previous, I know you'll know what I'm referring to, the former Red Mercury system.
Yes.
Yep.
All of which was actually replicated from ancient finds.
Yep. Yeah, goes back to the Bell Project.
That had a lot to do with a group of our forces going into Iraq, into the museum there, wasn't it, Mark? After that shock and awe campaign?
They needed, you know what, Jesse, they find these old scripts, right? Just like the script they found in 1998 that said Marduk is going to open the gate. It named Marduk as opening the gate. So he will inhabit.
Marduk is I've traced him directly to Apollyon.
Now,
in the book of Revelation.
That's right.
And it gives
However,
number 666.
These scripts did more than name him. It described his method of return, how he's going to return, what it looks like, where he's going to land, and how he's going to open the gate. And they'll never let that out into the public. But it described everything in detail. It's actually mind-blowing, but I'll tell you this, it lines up perfectly with Revelation. See, there's no script that the military-industrial complex is interested in that goes outside of the Bible. They have their own team that they research. They research the Bible continuously because they know they cannot change prophecy. To them, it's a window into the future. That's what prophecy is. I hate to say it, but they believe prophecy more than Christians do, because because they've seen them unfold and they see the evidence of the past of what was here on earth. They know the power that comes with that prophecy. In other words, they know the entities that are coming back. They know what happens when the Holy Spirit is gone. And they have been promised something. Each and every one of them have been promised something, and this is why they work so hard. Most of the leaders have been promised to be immortal, to live eternally. They've been promised this. The rest have been threatened. They've been, simply because they have to renounce Christ. You have to renounce Christ to be in certain factions. You cannot believe in Christ. I've known individuals that did not, they have heard the Bible, they've read a couple scriptures, they never ever got saved and were asked to denounce Christ in an oath. This was in an oath of who they would follow. So they had to take an oath to do that. And so people need to know what they're dealing with, but they have one good safety mechanism. If they're true to Christ, those devices cannot penetrate the Holy Spirit. They can't. So they want people to renounce Christ so they cannot have full power with the Holy Spirit here on earth. That's why their plans don't work quite right. And they're waiting on Apollyon or Marduk or whoever it is because they will open the gate. That's an absolute. Half the technology on earth is associated with taking the veil away and opening the gate. The veil that separates this dimension from the others. They want that gone. They're going to take it away.
Yep. Everything that I've researched corresponds exactly with what you're saying, Michael. Right down the line.
You know, Michael, I was reading an article where 33 more high-ranking military were removed from I think, nuclear watch. And it makes me think of that test you're talking about, this litmus test. Will you renounce Christ? Will you turn against the people? Will you follow the president's orders to the T without backing off? Will you renounce Christ? It seems... Now this is inside the Geneva, Switzerland complex. It's 300 feet underground, guys. It's a giant two circles, 27 kilometers, 19 miles, 300 feet underground. It's resonating frequencies at the speed of light all the way through the fault zones into Italy. And it's about to do a third computer setup, again in Budapest. It makes a perfect equilateral triangle. I'll show you that. It says the collider accelerates beams of protons and brings them into collision inside the four large detectors, Atlas, CMS, and LHCb. Particles are injected into the HLC or the collider at 450 gigavolts and boosted to 4 billion volts, nearly 10 times their injection energy. It's a giant amplifier, and it gets resonating in here so fast, guys, that they almost can't control it. And what's amazing, if you've seen the Steve Quayle report on the Hagman show, it said the last time they fired this up that it was almost opening dimensional ports like a Stargate. There were reports that people were seeing coming in and out of different dimensions. Giants. Police were called. More info on that on the video on the website. But it says at these energies, a proton completes roughly 11,000 laps every second. 19 miles, 11 times in a second. They're having to keep it at 300 feet underground because it's at that depth. You're almost at 0 degrees Celsius. It's cool, and it has to stay cool. But guys, they're talking about portal dimensioning openings like Stargate. It gets better. Hold on. Now, guys, this technology, they've been dealing with this since the 50s. But this is outside the buildings in Geneva at the CERN location. And this is at a dedication of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, that's outside. It's kind of like the Denver airport omens. Notice that ring, like these giant electromagnets. But it says that Shiva does a dance between dimensions, between the earth and the heavens, and between the spiritual dimensions. It's talking about this dance of electrons between these dimensions. But Shiva is the destroyer. Now, who would want to open a port to let the destroyer in? Now, at the bottom you see, this is part of the way a linear collider works. It's large underground sections and tunnels that increases acceleration to tremendous speeds. Again, 11,000 laps, 19-mile loop in a second. And guys are about to boost this energy beyond control, if you ask me. Now, it's important to understand what I'm saying here. It's like Robert Oppenheimer. It was given the technology and information on how to build a nuclear bomb. And what did he say? He said, I have become death. Now, these guys you see sitting around here congratulating one another think they've been handed extreme technological advances. When what's happening is they've been handed the key to disaster. They've been handed a way to build the instrument needed to open the dimension to the bottomless pit. Stay with me. Now, remember in Revelation, I think it's chapter 5, it says the angel came down that had the key, are you listening, to the bottomless pit. Now, these guys are trying every way they can to open these dimensional portals, and they've got countries from around the world contributing billions suddenly. Why? Because, guys, everyone on this earth is not children of God. You think they may be getting ready to open a portal to welcome their Father, to welcome destruction. That's what Shiva is in the background in that ring of fire. Now, again, I think there's a few people in the top echelon that actually know what's going on. But this is where, again, they discovered the motion particle, BOSON, called the God particle. And now they want to shut it down and boost it up tremendously to see what else they can open. And on Shiva's head, there's a symbol called the third eye. And it's exactly like the symbol that you see on the Stargate movies. Exactly, that's where they took it from. On the plaque that's below that statue, they talk about this. It says, however, at the CERN Linear Accelerator Center Super Collider Hadron is a statue of the dancing Shiva is giving pride and position. Talked about this on the show the other day. The lady called in from Florida talking about the dances above and below is the same as above as it is below. There's a cosmic dance. Listen. Cosmic dance of energy back and forth between the physical realm and the 0-point field. A constant creation and destruction of matter from the void. The continuous flow of energy in and out of the material world is the cosmic dance of Shiva. Guys, I know your ears are open. The experiment marked the first time the creation of matter from radiation has been directly observed. Pair production, the formation of a positron and an electron, happens when electromagnetic energy interacts with matter. This is the cosmic dance of Shiva, not the propaganda of the Vatican. The Shiva is a corpse eating a man, or that the Shiva is a corpse eating a man or covered in ashes with a snake as a Kuma pet. Now, regardless of what Shiva represents, we know we're children of God and Christ is our Savior. I'm going through history and technological points here. The statue is a gift from India, celebrating CERN's long association with India, which started in the 60s. and continues strongly today. Goes on to talk about the unveiling. In the Hindu religion, the form of the dancing Lord Shiva is known as Mataraj and symbolizes Shakti, or life force. As a plaque alongside the statue explains, the belief is that Lord Shiva danced the universe, or you're listening, into existence and motivates it and will eventually extinguish it, the destroyer. Carl Sagan drew the metaphor between the cosmic dance of the Nataraj and the modern study of the cosmic dance of subatomic particles. Goes on to talk about it was a wax casting from India. Now guys, this is in Geneva. Remember, there's 19 miles and more of underground tunnels there at 300 feet, but this is up where you park. This is in the main building. I want you to think, have you ever seen this structure before? I know you have in one of my videos, and some of you guys that keep up with this, you have too. Also, before I go down, I want to mention this about CERN, and this is what I was talking about, waking and giving rise to the technological beast. It says the World Wide Web began at CERN. It's a project called Inquire, initiated by Tim Berners-Lee and Robert Callaley in 1990. Said they were honored for this by the Association for Computer Machinery in 1995. It says based on the concept of hypertext, the project was aimed at facilitating sharing information among researchers. The first website went online in 1991. On the 30th of April 1993, CERN announced the World Wide Web would be free to everyone. There's a copy of the original first web page. But guys, this is the control center. Now this is CERN in Geneva. Again, they needed another supercomputer. Italy. Now they're building the third in that perfect triangle in Budapest. Enough computer power to run the world internet, to keep up with everything that's going on. The technological side of the beast. Now guys, they broadcast underground, from 300 feet underground, all the way through this fault zone that runs above Italy to Gran Sasso. Then now they're building to Budapest, Hungary. See this triangle? The three main computers, they're sending these electromagnetic magnets to Florida. They're already in Illinois. Heads up, be safe. January 16, 2014. Guys, this is the above-ground building at CERN in Geneva, Switzerland, part of that underground super collider. And this is what I was asking Anthony Patch about. And notice how similar it is to the antenna at the top of the Nikola Tesla Tower, guys. Identical dimensions and proportions. And in our discussion about CERN and the opening of the Stargate that these scientists are trying to do, and how that relates directly to the key to the bottomless pit. This demonic entities coming upon this earth. But Anthony Patch will be with us tomorrow. He's author of Covert Catastrophe, and he's been with us before, and this is one of the things. And this is an overlay, guys, of comparing that magnet to the inside of the United Nations building. Look at the size of this thing. And why am I doing this? Because not only do they have Shiva there, the god of destruction that dances between the dimensions there, but they also are building these around the world in in Florida, in Illinois. And guys, in the United Nations building, there's what's called a meditation room, and it's a cult. They're setting this thing up with these giant magnets, and right in the middle of this occult meeting room that's hidden inside the United Nations building, right on this ley line, right in this section of the earth, it's going to be between the Illinois Collider and CERN. What is going on? This is a picture of it. It's one of the world's largest magnets. Now, and also notice the pyramids in the back there in that painting, guys, that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the occult elite getting ready for the kings to give their power. Now, also on tomorrow's show, I think I've got it set up to where I can take three-way conference calls, and I've sent out a call to Michael to come in and join Anthony and I on the show. I have not heard back whether or not he has the time. I'm sure he would love to if he can, so it may turn out to be a really fantastic Blog Talk show. If I need to go 2 hours on it, we will on that, guys. But things are really getting interesting. And on the Fireball reports, they're still coming in. Again, the ones in Europe are not the same as the ones we're seeing here in the U.S. Different colors, different meteor storms is what we're dealing with. But again, there's a lot going on with this CERN thing, guys, and it's got a lot to do with these end times and what they're trying to do. Heads up, be safe. Vatican is getting set up, and they now have a Jesuit priest as the Pope, you know that. And the Jesuits were always the astronomers of the church. Now they're there, and you know they own their own observatory out there in Arizona. And an observatory that is not the Vatican's, that's next to it, owned by the University of Arizona, and a couple other people contribute to that. It's where the actual Lucifer binocular infrared giant telescope is. It's not in the VAT observatory, but they have full access to it. But the word coming out, and this is from inside the Vatican and inside and from the people that are running the observatories, that they're preparing the earth through the new Pope to welcome an alien savior that's going to introduce a new doctrine. Do not take that mark. We've been warned about the synagogue of Satan for a long time. But guys, watch that video. Start opening your mind so that your hearts do not fail you when you see these things come on this earth. Heads up.